hope that you're doing very well. Today's video is what I'm hoping is going to be the first in a small series on the channel that's going to be running throughout this month, and it's going to be sharing days 2 to 5 of my Inktober project for this year. So I didn't film day 1, and I'm not planning on filming every single day going forward either, but I'm hoping to collect the days that I do film when I have good lighting and I have my setup ready and I have time to do things nice and, calmly. I'm hoping to collect the footage that I do get into a series of videos of this kind so I can share some of the process with you and kind of talk about it or answer any questions that you might have. And generally just mostly get to share the process more in depth, because I haven't been making this kind of draw with me or paint with me videos in a while, because for a while it was all that I was making and it was getting overwhelming. But this is really a project that I want to share extensively. So here we are. As I said, I didn't film day 1. So we're starting off with day 2. And I thought today I would give you a little bit of context about what this project is about for me this year and where I'm planning on going with it, what materials I'm using and all of that. So my goal this Inktober is to put together a zine. So I am working with ink, I'm working with ballpoint pen, but I am not following the official prompt list or any other prompt list. Though I will say there's some really, really nice ones going around this year. I think I'll try to leave a list of my favorite artists that I've discovered and that I'm following this Inktober, as well as a few of my favorite lists linked in the description, so you can check them out as well. But generally speaking, my goal is to put together a zine. So everything that I'm doing kind of is done under that perspective. I decided to come up with a theme because obviously I want the zine to be like coherent, and the theme that I came up with is more of a title as well, and it is Inside the Witch's Workshop. So the idea came from the fact that I really wanted to draw another storefront. I drew a cafe storefront a couple of weeks ago and had a really good time drawing that, and I thought it would be nice to draw another storefront and then have that as the cover of the zine, and then have the rest of the zine be sort of an exploration of the inside of the shop, and all of its little objects and tools that the shop owner might use to work on their craft. And so what I came up with was the idea of this like young green witch that runs an apothecary in this sort of like fantasy magical village, and we're kind of following a bit of her work journey. So essentially the idea is that I didn't just want to draw objects at random. I like the idea of it sort of telling a bit of a story. So we're kind of starting out with foraging tools and the plants and other like nature bits that she might have found while foraging in the forest, and then what journey those follow to being like dried and stored away and then turned into like salves and balms and like used for potions and all of these kinds of things. And this was really just a way to give myself an excuse to draw a lot of botanicals and a lot of like potion bottles and a lot of like witchy magical things, which I really, really love. Like I've always loved it. And so I was very excited to get started with this, and now that I'm a week in, I am even more excited to keep going with it because I'm having such a good time working on these. I will say I didn't really go in with a precise expectation of how long each of these drawings was going to take me, but I will say they're taking a while. I think each drawing, like each individual drawing on the page, is taking like about 15 minutes, which is a bit longer than I was expecting. I think it's something that I didn't really put a lot of thought in, but I guess intuitively I was expecting it to be a bit quicker, but because I'm shading things quite dark and I'm trying to put a lot of detail in certain things, it is taking up a bit of time, because building up the darks with ballpoint pen does take a while, especially if you wanted to have a nice texture and look interesting and not like I don't know. I feel like you can get really different textures if you just shade like hatching or cross hatching, or if you do different patterns. And I've been having a really good time playing with those because you get really different looks. And so that's something that I'm focusing on a lot, but it's also taking a bit longer than I was expecting. Anyways, I digress. So that's kind of the general plan. I like the idea of like telling a bit of a story with it, and I think it's going to come through a bit better once I start adding text. So if you see a lot of blank space on the pages, I will be adding text, but I've decided I'm going to add that once I scan all of the pages. I made my own font a while ago, like a couple of weeks ago, which is a very like handwritten typewriter font, like hand traced typewriter font. So it's a bit textured, but it's still got that like serif look, which I really like. And so I'm going to be using that to add all of my text, because I didn't really trust myself to do it by hand every day. I knew I would mess it up, and then it would just be more difficult to fix. And this is just going to save me up a lot of time. So hopefully that will kind of help tie everything together. But I obviously also needed the illustrations to make sense. And I think it would have also been really cool to do a similar thing with a prompt list, and then just like collect them all in a zine to be like, this is the work that I made this month, and to have it be more of an art book, I guess, and like a collection of illustrations. But I like the idea of the story and like giving it a bit of context. And I will have a couple more like complex illustrations thrown in there as well. I've not done any yet so far, but I do want to do a few drawings of both the outside of the shop, but also actual scenes of the inside of the shop to like give a bit more ambience and like a bit more context, I guess. I have a couple of things sketched of the witch actually working and like brewing potions and doing other things. So hopefully those are going to come in the next few weeks. I do have the project planned out with thumbnails. I made a list, so like a number list of each page that I could kind of write the subject in for. And then on the other side of my sketchbook page, I have just thumbnails for all of the pages. I am rearranging them. I actually, today, which was day 7, I did like a big rearranging, and I added like another piece of paper in there to like write down my new plan. But it's good to have both a list and a visual reference to be able to like pull it all together, especially if you want something that's going to be coherent. I think that's something that like I've seen people do for like illustrated books and other things of the kind. I think it just sort of makes sense to work in this kind of visual way as well. And the plan is to have one of those fuller illustrations at the very beginning, like as the very first page, just to give a bit of an introduction to our character, I guess. I also want to draw a cat. I know for sure she's got a cat. I think I might do a better like full page illustration of him towards the end of the book. But I also quite like the idea of including him in like the first page. But I've left the cover and the very first page to draw at a later date, because I didn't feel ready to do that as my first thing. And I think my main inspiration for the general layout of the rest of the pages are like vintage diaries and like botanical illustrations. It's this kind of like layout and look that I've always really loved. And one of the things that I really like about it, other than like the visual aspect, is also the fact that it technically allows me to work both on like a full spread if I have a day where I'm not as busy or I'm feeling really inspired and I really just want to draw a lot, but also if I'm having a day where I don't have as much time or I'm tired and I just want to do a small drawing, I can also just do one of the elements that are going to make up the piece without having to complete the full spread, because it's not like one continuous image, it's a lot of smaller images on the page. So as much as I do like the idea of including a few like fuller like full page illustrations, I I preferred the idea of this kind of layout because I knew it was going to be more functional for me in the long run, especially in the later weeks of the month. I started uni this week, but I know I already have an exam at the end of the month, and things just are going to keep piling up. And so it'll be nice to kind of have a bit of leeway in that way. I'm also a bit ahead at the moment, so technically, the sketchbook that I'm using is 40 pages. So 40 pages means about 10 pages a week. Now, this week, I accidentally ended up doing 2 pages a day. So overall, I was technically meant to have 14 pages. Today, which is day 7, I only did 1, so I have 13 pages. But it does mean that I am a bit ahead. And I only realized this was the case yesterday because the way that I planned it in my head was, okay, I have 40 pages. I need to do like a page a day plus an extra page every 3 days. And then because of the way that I planned the spreads, I was thinking about it in spreads because it's going to be a booklet and not in single pages. And so I just started naturally working in spreads. And so now I'm a few pages ahead, which is wonderful. It's great. It means I'm going to have a few days where I can maybe not draw if I just can't do it. I like the idea of drawing every day, but it's also, you need to be realistic about what you can do. And I think there's no point in drawing if it's just going to drain you and if you just don't have the energy for it. And like, there's something to be said about pushing yourself a bit, but also you need to be able to recognize your own limits, and do what you can to not burn out in a situation like this, because it is really easy to burn out doing a project of this kind. So that's kind of the situation that I find myself in at the moment, but I'm having a really good time working on it. I have the next week or so of spreads planned out, which is cool, and then I do have a few extra pages, so I didn't plan every single page. I think at the very beginning I left 8 empty pages, so 4 spreads, for just anything that I might want to add as I'm going on with it. And I think now I have 6 of those pages left to fill up with ideas, so it's good. Like, I like the fact that I left a few blank pages, so I can kind of rearrange things a bit as well. But that's kind of where I'm at with things. I did want to mention the materials that I'm using. So as I said, I'm using a ballpoint pen. It's just your standard Bic ballpoint pen. It's not the most comfortable, like I don't find it has the most comfortable grip, but I've genuinely just not had the time to go out and look for a different ballpoint pen. I'll see if I can find one with like the rubber grip, because I find those pens a lot more comfortable to hold. But for now, this is what I have. It works fine. And then I am doing pencil sketches underneath all of my drawings. And for those, I'm either using a 0.5 just HB lead mechanical pencil, or my favorite pencil of all time, which is a Palomino Blackwing 602 pencil. They are quite expensive, but I got a pack of 12 as a Christmas gift a couple of years ago, and I'm barely halfway through them, but I love them. The best pencil I've ever used. So I'm using that. And then eraser. I have a Staedtler eraser, but I also have another one that's unbranded. And then in terms of the sketchbook, I put a question poll thing up to ask whether anyone had any questions about anything Inktober related. And someone did ask whether I also made the sketchbook. The answer is yes. I knew I wanted to work in a sketchbook rather than loose pages, because the plan wasn't to work on single illustrations. As I said, the plan was to make a zine from the start. So for me, it made sense to work in a similar format, so it would be easier to make the illustrations match up and to scan things as well. And I also knew I didn't want to buy a new sketchbook if I could avoid it, just because I thought I could use one that I already had, and then I also found another that I potentially considered, but neither really met my needs for this particular project. And so I just decided that it would be easier for me to make one out of paper that I also already had from an old A3 sketchbook that I'm just using as scrap paper at the moment. And this also just meant that I could just make it to the measurements that I needed. So I made it as an A5 and with the number of pages that I wanted. So it's an A5 book with 40 pages in total. So I think it's 10 sheets, 10 A4 sheets folded in half, and like I can't remember the name of the stitch binding technique that I use, but stitched together, and then the craft cover on top of that, which will not be part of the final zine. So the cover of the actual final zine is going to be is included in the 40 pages, because I'll be drawing the cover on the very first page of the book, but I just wanted it to be a bit more protected for the month, and I also wanted to be able to draw the cover on the same paper that I would draw the rest of the illustrations and the spreads, and so that's just kind of what made the most sense to me. The two things that I was looking for the most, outside of like size and number of pages, was I wanted as white a paper as possible. I normally tend to prefer for both my sketchbooks and my notebooks cream paper, because I find it a lot less straining on my eyes, especially if I'm writing for long periods of time, and I generally just like the look of it better. I like warm toned things in general and palettes, and so that's what I tend to gravitate towards, but that makes for quite difficult scanning, because it takes me a long time to like color correct that and like brighten that up, and it's always a whole thing. And also I wanted to make sure that my paper was thick enough that the drawings, like the pen wouldn't ghost on the other side, again, just so it would make scanning easier. And those are kind of the reasons why I didn't choose the sketchbooks that I already had, because they kind of had those problems. But I'm having absolutely no issues with the sketchbook that I'm using at the moment, other than the fact that the cover is a bit thick. But I only had really thick craft paper, which is really good because it makes me feel like the book is very secure and protected. But also I do have to keep holding the pages clipped together with like a clip and a piece of paper under it, so it doesn't damage the pages, both to keep it open and to keep it closed, because otherwise the cover doesn't quite bend enough. But it's not like, it doesn't bother me. I think it also quite like looks kind of nice in the videos, and it adds it's like a little object that I can include in the photos to post on Instagram as well, which is always cool because I'm always like trying to find props to make the photos more interesting. So that's kind of it, I think, in terms of materials. I don't think I'm using anything else at the moment. The drawings that I'm doing in my sketchbook to plan things out are just done with the same pencils again. And other than that, I don't really think I'm using anything else. So if that changes, I'll let you know. I did initially want to also do a few paintings, but I don't think I will. I like the idea of keeping it all ballpoint pen, but I wanted to go into it with an open mindset, and I like the idea of just being able to work with whatever medium I felt most drawn to each day. But since then this has turned into so much of a bigger project that the situation is kind of different, and so I think I will stick to ballpoint pen for the whole rest of the thing. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. I've been talking for like 90 minutes already, so I hope you enjoyed seeing me draw all of these and hearing me talk about the project. I did want to mention, I think I have settled on a name for our fellow witch. Someone suggested Willow as a name in one of my latest video, and I've had some other really great name suggestions, and I've also put together my own list of other names that I found looking up at like baby names lists and stuff like that, but I think Willow is the one. So that's it. That's our witch's name. I do also have a name idea for the cat. I think I'll pick that one myself, but I'll reveal that at a later date. But yeah, with that being said, I hope that you enjoyed seeing this process. If you want to see me post well, if you want to see these drawings as I work on them each day, I am posting every day on Instagram at the moment, so I'll leave that linked in my description. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. I hope you're having a good time, and I will see you very soon with a new video, and hopefully with a new video in this series as well. So have a good week. Bye.